Welcome to Discovering. The North Country Trail starts in New York, ends in North Dakota, and passes through the Upper Peninsula along the way.
The more you hike the trail, even on a day hike, the more you realize I need to make this light.
The report is in, and the wolves are all but gone. A look at the important role wolves play on Isle Royale.
It takes more than just an ice bridge to fix the population from the wolf standpoint.
Kick back and put your feet up. It's Monday night and time for Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
Whether you're up for an afternoon walk or a cross UP trek, the North Country Trail will not disappoint. The Upper Peninsula portion of the trail enters the UP at the Mackinac Bridge and exits near Ironwood, passing through old-growth forests, rugged hills, and Lake Superior shoreline. It offers some of the most remote, uninhabited country found in the entire trail system.
It's in New York State. It's a totally 7 states. It's about to be 8, and the 8th state is Vermont. It's about a 40-mile section, and when that trail is built, and it's already been, one group has assumed responsibility for it, a partner organization, hiking group, it will connect with the Appalachian Trail. Currently, the North Country Trail at 4,700 miles is the longest of the scenic trails in the United States. You know, people talk about the Appalachian Trail, the AT, they talk about the Pacific Rim, they talk about the Continental Divide Trail. This is the longest trail, but it's also fascinating in that, you know, you think, where does it go through, like Ohio? And how can you go through Dayton, Ohio, and say you've got a magnificent trail? The community of Dayton has an absolutely spectacular trail. They've rebuilt a lot of trail, and it's a very, very different experience. And so you get both the woods and you get, you know, the residents. Here in the Upper Peninsula, where I'm most concerned with, we have most of our trail, you can't even use a cell phone. There are many, many groups that maintain sections of the trail. We have partner groups who are either hiking chapters or hiking groups. And we all get together to maintain and build this trail and keep it a pristine area. We break our group up into chapters. Ours is the Superior Shoreline chapter. To the west, we have the North Country Trail hikers, and then there's 2 chapters beyond it. To the east, we have the Hiawatha Shore to Shore. If you go onto their websites, we all endeavor to have a lot of descriptions about what you will find along our respective trail sections, including descriptions of not only the trail tread, where you have to cross a road or walk a road, but whether it's wet, whether it's hilly, whether you have an area that is different. We can't put a lot of blazes up because of regulations, but all of that's going to be there. Maps are on our website so people can see those. And this is not only just for the Upper Peninsula, but this is for all 4,700 miles of the trail. Our trail also is almost exclusively foot traffic. We don't have horses, don't have bikes, we don't have ATVs, just to keep it simple, keep it beautiful, keep it quiet. We have both federal land, we have state land, we have private land that is traversed by the trail. We have been working with the governor, Governor Snyder's group. The governor has been very, very supportive, as has the DNR. When you get to the areas in Pictured Rocks, Pictured Rocks sees about 11,000 hikers a year. When you get there, you've got a different trail. And you do have a lot of rocky areas. You have areas where the great vistas onto Lake Superior. It's truly gorgeous. The vistas are second to none as far as looking out, because you're up very, very high above Lake Superior in most places. And so consequently, you've got great vistas you can see. The trail's in a constant state of development, and it takes a lot of manpower to maintain it, especially because things grow so quickly. Ultimately, our goal is to have the absolute premier hiking experience in North America. Is what we try to do is to get people to adopt sections of trail. Somebody's got a camp and the trail's nearby. Well, maybe we want to adopt a half a mile either way from their camp. We are under the auspices of the National Park Service. We are all volunteers for them. In fact, our entire organization for 4,700 miles only has 9 full-time and part-time employees. Everybody else is volunteer. But our trail is a linear trail, which means it goes from, not necessarily in a straight line, but it doesn't circle back, which says, okay, if you're going to hike a section of trail, you got to think about how you're going to get to the beginning and get to the and back to the end. Where's your vehicle? Are you going to be up to hiking in and out and camping along the trail? People can camp anywhere along the trail. If you're by a state park, there are rules about how far you can camp. You have to be away to camp there, but that really doesn't happen that often because there's not that many of them. Along the North Country Trail, as we are here in the forest area, the Forest Service property, you can camp anywhere along here. And there are some camps that are set up in various chapter sections, and our organization breaks up the trail in chapters. Our chapter has totally about 120 miles. Each chapter has about that you maintain or are responsible for maintaining. Some of them have camps on them, some don't. This one is one of 3 on our 20-mile segment, and this was put up by a Eagle Scout as an Eagle Scout project years ago, long before I became involved with it. And over the years, people have fixed it up. If one thinks about what would you like to find somewhere on the trail in Michigan, you can find it. It's in one place or the other, be it in the Lower Peninsula, in the Upper Peninsula, you can find that. If you want to go through marshes, there are marshes to go through. Some of them have boardwalks, or what we call a puncheon that goes through. Others, you walk across beaver dams. Roughly speaking, the average person, the professional hikers, the real distance hikers do more. But we try to tell people, think about this in terms of 1 mile in a half an hour. And that's pretty much going to be the case, that you'll be able to do that. You can schedule it that way. And it makes it a little bit more enjoyable. Try to figure out where your roads are in advance if you're hiking an area, because you've got to know where to park a car. And if you're going to have to walk back on the trail to do that. Also, let somebody know where you're going. It's all interesting. You keep finding different things. I can walk a trail a dozen times. This particular segment I've probably been on 150 or 200 times, and yet I'm always seeing something different, or maybe hearing something different. And again, it's something that very few people really get here and see and enjoy this as much as they should.
Hi, I'm Brian Whitens from 906 Outdoors. I'd like to thank you for watching our show and invite you to visit our online store. You'll find a variety of outdoor products from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and more. You'll find unique items like handmade fishing creels, trapping baskets, quivers, nets, snowshoes, hand-forged knives, and more. Top quality products like Hidden Hunter portable blinds, Rapid River knives, fishing tackle, Stormy chromers, and food products too. Check us out anytime at 906outdoors.com. And again, thanks for watching. The 2014-15 annual report of ecological studies of wolves on Isle Royale is out. I had the chance to talk with Isle Royale Wolf Authority Rolf Peterson about the details.
Well, we returned from Isle Royale this past winter, 2015, and the count of wolves, which is something that's been maintained for 57 years now, the count of wolves was three animals left. And this follows a decline in wolves that's been going on for several years. The average number of wolves is 20 to 30, and they've been as high as 50. But beginning in about 2008, the inbreeding pressures really started to build on them, and the last 4 years, essentially, wolf predation has been gone from Isle Royale because of inbreeding. And this is inbreeding just like in every other species of plant and animal. Isle Royale wolves have no choice. They're all about as closely related as brothers and sisters, and they're desperate to mate, of course, as most species are, and they will, in some cases, breed with their brothers or their sisters or their mothers and their fathers, and the result is not very good. So the past several years, wolves have been down at the lowest level ever, just 8 or 9, and then this year, like 2015, they dropped to just 3. And the problem is they're not reproducing very well, and that's the classical symptom of too much inbreeding. Now, the inbreeding has resulted from lack of wolves coming into Isle Royale, and that's because there's no ice most years, and wolves on the mainland just can't get over there. Now, in 2014 and 15 were cold winters here in the area, and we did have ice bridges, but now things have deteriorated to the point where the wolves on Isle Royale are so anxious to leave that they've used these ice bridges to bail out, to just get out of this place. So it takes more than just an ice bridge to fix the population from the wolf standpoint. So without new genetic renewal, the population is basically doomed, and it's just a question of, do they go down to 0 this year or next year, or a couple of years from now? But they're gone from Isle Royale. Yeah, no, the study of wolves and moose on Isle Royale began back in 1958, and the first winter study was in 1959, and they've been counted every year since. So the average number of wolves and moose has been 20 to 30, about 24 wolves actually, and about 1,000 moose. And that's, of course, the system goes up and down a lot, and it's very dynamic. So the science challenge is to figure out, well, why is it going up and why is it going down? And but right now, 2015, just 3 wolves, and then the moose population hasn't seen much wolf predation for 4 years now, and they're just increasing. Doubled, the number of moose has doubled in the last 4 years, and the population's young, and they're going to just keep increasing until they reach such a high level that they're starving to death and they've wiped out their food supply, and then they die off in mass numbers. That's been seen already twice in the last 100 years, as recently as 1996. And at that point, wolves were kept down by, initially they crashed because of parvovirus coming into the system for the first time in the 1980s. And then wolves got into a situation where they weren't reproducing very well, and in the early 90s we weren't sure exactly what was going on, but now we look back at that, and that was an inbreeding problem then too, and it was solved by a wolf that came over on his own in 1997 and started breeding right away the next year. And then he was so successful that within 3 years he had offspring breeding in all the resident packs, and within 9 years all the wolves on the island were his own descendants. And so he was so successful that, almost too successful, everybody since is a close relative of his, and so they can't really breed without inbreeding very closely. That was maybe the most important thing I learned, was what happened once that wolf came in. I mean, he just revolutionized the genetics of the population of wolves. The wolves themselves were able to kill moose at a rate that we'd never seen before, and it produced a low point for moose of about 500 animals that ran from about 2004 to 2010. And what that allowed to happen was a recovery of vegetation. That's really what supports the whole thing, these trees and shrubs that moose eat. And because of that incoming wolf, the wolf population flourished. Moose were brought down to a level where trees were able to flourish in a way that we haven't seen in 50 years. So that's what's endangered now by moose getting out of control real fast, is they're going to shortcut that forest recovery, and it'll be the last chance for some major forest tree species like balsam fir, which is the main source of food for moose in wintertime. I started work on Isle Royale in 1970 as a graduate student from Purdue University, and the study of wolves and moose had begun at Purdue in 1958 by Durward Allen, who used to be actually a Michigan DNR employee in the 1930s. And when he first heard of wolves getting on Isle Royale in the early 50s, he started figuring out how to do the science right. Figure out how many wolves there are, how many moose there are, what is this brand new wolf population going to do to these moose, where people aren't directing the outcome. And particularly, they're not killing wolves, they're not harvesting moose, they're not cutting trees, and there just isn't another place like that. So I was Durward Allen's last graduate student at Purdue on this project, and then he retired and turned it over to me, and we moved it up to Michigan Tech here in 1975. And then the decades just have rolled out pretty fast ever since. We've seen this inbreeding problem coming for many years, and actually for about 4 years we've been suggesting, the logical thing to do to fix it, to bring in the genetic exchanges that can't happen anymore on their own, or they aren't happening on their own, is to just drop off a couple wolves that would breed with the resident wolves. So you put in 2 males or 2 females or something, so that if they breed, they have to breed with residents, and that would bring in these new genes. And what people have a hard time, including me, understanding is, just what exactly this inbreeding means. Every one of us have 4 or 5 or 6 recessive genes that are either fatal or deleterious, and they don't get expressed because of dominant genes that are outbred, that aren't of the same recessive form. And so that's what you would do by bringing in a mainland wolf that's not related to the Isle Royale wolves. They would mate with Isle Royale wolves, and then their dominant genes would mask those deleterious genes. And that's all there is to it. And it's worked spectacularly well in the case of the Florida panther. About 20 years ago, that was done for the first time ever in a mammal, and gosh, the results are just fabulous. Sweden is using the same approach now to maintain its wolf population, which is isolated down in southern Sweden, has no access to basically the Russian stock of wolves. So 4 years ago, we started talking about genetic rescue, and it almost certainly would have worked. But now, the clock keeps advancing, and now we're down to 3 wolves, and there aren't enough wolves left to be able to pull off a genetic rescue. So it would still be a worthy goal right now to restart the population, to restore wolves in a manner which will hold on to the integrity of the forest, basically, and keep that moose population from exploding. But I wouldn't call it a genetic rescue. I'd call it a restart. And the genetic rescue idea is past, I think. So it's a race between, whether the moose are going to get out of hand or whether the trees can grow out of their reach. But the decision of what will happen next is up to the National Park Service, and they're taking a pretty slow, deliberate approach and trying to figure everything out before anything gets done at all. And that'll take probably years, starting in 2015. Now we're looking at 3-4 years probably, before that normal bureaucratic process would be complete. One big concern for the National Park Service, for all the national parks of the United States, is hanging on to the values that those parks represent in the face of what's going to be unprecedented change in the near future. And they're betting on climate change. It's already here, and it's already affecting national parks in many ways. At Isle Royale, the effect is no ice connecting the island to the mainland, but one of the important goals of the national parks, they want to maintain resilient national parks. In other words, parks that can resist change for as long as possible. So that resilience means keeping as many of the native species in those parks as possible. Now that comes down to a real important local prospect at Isle Royale, one with real world consequences, and that's the arrival of white-tailed deer. They're going to swim. They swim out every summer into Lake Superior, and so far they've all died of the cold water before they get to Isle Royale. So we pick up skeletons and carcasses of dead deer, and every decade we get more and more of these dead deer coming in on shore. One of these warm years, Lake Superior is going to be warm enough, or there'll be a big enough deer that survives that swim, and that would be a huge change with dire prospects for moose, because deer carry a lot of parasites that moose aren't used to, and one in particular, brainworm, which is fatal in moose. So to maintain the resilience of the park as we know it, it means dealing with deer that might get there, and I don't know of anything as effective at dealing with deer as wolves. In this context, they would find those deer immediately and take care of them. And it'd be a kind of a novel thing for an Isle Royale wolf to see a white-tailed deer, because they're mighty fast, but they can figure it out, I'm quite sure. So that's how wolves could be really important in maintaining the resiliency of Isle Royale National Park.
Well, that's it for tonight. If you'd like to keep tabs on what's coming up on Discovering or see where we've been, you can join us on Facebook or go to 906outdoors.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week right here on Discovering. Oh, and a big thanks to Cody Carlson for letting me use his car as a tripod.